Welcome to the eSports Report, ladies and gentlemen. Benson, joined by the wonderful Christopher Puckett, back from your adventures.
Yes.
In my motherland.
It was fantastic.
Yeah? Do you have fun?
I love your mother and her land.
Good. I'm
no,
glad.
seriously, I met Ben's mom. She's quite awesome.
Did you? Yeah, actually, you did.
Yeah.
You did, but that was ironically in America, not England. But Gfinity, fantastic event. We kind of touched upon that the past couple of days. Some pretty awesome results coming out there. Some big surprises as well.
Yeah.
Europe playing very well. You particularly.
Europe doesn't suck at COD anymore.
Yeah, we can play.
They've all caught up.
They have. They have. I mean, how was the event for you?
It was awesomely long on Sunday, but it was actually really exciting. I think their group play style. You know, it's the same format that we used at X Games. I think it's the new way that all tournaments should go.
Kind of that GSL style?
The only concern I had was I thought Envy was the third best team overall, and them getting a top 8 finish based on their single elimination bracket placement. I think that's kind of tough.
Right.
So I think that's the only fix I would make. But overall, I thought it was a fantastic event. The production was super smooth. Just everyone that works over at Gfinity has been pulling triples, doubles, and it definitely is paying off.
Yeah, it was a fantastic event, that's for sure. Speaking of other events as well, MLG and UMG recently announced some information about pool play qualification. This kind of came out. People were getting a little bit of buzz around Call of Duty events. Only 3 more remaining.
Yes.
There you can see the information on your screens.
All right, guys, it's going to be 8 registered teams that will qualify for pool play based on an NA Advanced Warfare Pro points as of 9 a.m. Eastern on Monday, August 31st. 8 more teams will qualify for pool play, earned between 9 a.m. Eastern of Saturday the 8th and 9 a.m. of the 31st of August there. So
a lot of 9 a.m.s.
Lots of times there for you guys to note, but really where you're looking at qualifying here is if you don't have a ton of pro points, you want to earn it as many as you can from this Saturday to the end of the month. And some of the notable events, the 2K this weekend, as well as the 5K, which will go down on Sunday. And then I think next Sunday is going to be a 10K held on our site by Scuff Gaming.
Exciting. So there's still plenty of tournaments for you guys at the weekends to try and grind out, pick up as many pro points as you possibly can, and then, of course, try and get into pools come UMG. But as well as that, we also had some interesting news regarding rosters coming out.
Yeah, we did.
Got some emails in this morning, as well as some players on Twitter. Sadly, and I hate to have to say this if you're unaware, Swanny has left Epsilon North America. He decided after doing some analysis work at Gfinity, it was best for his career in the long term to stay back in England.
Yeah, I was actually had a chance to hang out with Swanny quite a bit over the weekend. And first of all, Swanny's the best analyst we have in the game. I mean, it's Swanny and Rambo Ray, and then there's everyone else. But Swanny, talking to him, he's like, you know, I don't want to risk it. Coming over to the U.S., there's a time restriction of the amount of time I can be here. And really, my time is going to be up right around the time Black Ops 3 comes out. So I'd rather focus on Black Ops 3 launch, getting an NA team right away, and being able to get into the first Pro League for Black Ops, rather than flying back and forth and hoping the U.S. lets me back in.
Yeah, it's something that I've been kind of talking about a lot when we've been talking about European players coming over, trying to play in North America. The visa restrictions can be very, very tough. And we've seen a couple of changes with TCM, which maybe behind closed doors had something similar to this. But this is Swanny really coming out, being very open, saying it's a short-term sacrifice for what could be a long-term gain. And, you know, hopefully it does pay off for him.
And, you know, he was really torn. He's like, I don't know if I can do that to my teammates. And I told someone, I was like, dude, you're at the bottom of the Pro League. Like,
yeah, you're not going anywhere.
You guys have a very slim chance of being able to rally back and get all the way back in. I was like, is it really worth the risk for you? Because that's something you got to keep in mind. This is a life decision for a lot of the European players trying to come over to the U.S. So, Swanny, I think he made the best move possible here, and it sounds like his teammates were on board with it, totally understood. Remy and Nagafen, you know, the runners-up from World Champs, they're definitely still very talented players, and I think they should be able to pull whatever AR they want.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have any issues. And, you know, Remy kind of came out and said Swanny's moving back to Europe for personal reasons. Didn't seem like there was any hard feelings. And I think if you're Epsilon, it's kind of hard to have hard feelings for him moving back because, like you said, they're at the bottom of the Pro League. Qualification at this point requires a big, big run. I think now it's realistically just, hey, let's try and pick up a battle, someone we're going to enjoy playing with, and just see if we can turn things around. Just play with fun, play with a little bit of flair that we saw at the Call of Duty World Championship.
I definitely think they will. Epsilon, you know, they're not out of it yet. They've got their work cut out for them, but there's a few players that, you know, I tweeted out about, and I was like, who are those top free agent battles that you put on your squad? A lot of people immediately said Goonjar. They're like, maybe Goonjar still got it. Parasite got a lot of love from people out there. Also saw a lot of love for players like Fears, but Fizzerp wrote back, really happy that Fears is going to stay loyal and sticking with me throughout all of this. Who would be the battles that you would be looking at?
I mean, for me, immediately the big question is, do they look at any of the European players? That's the first thing. Are they thinking, hey, does Mad Cat want to come out? Does he want to potentially play with us? That would be a big go-to target. But then I think from Mad Cat's perspective now, it's like, well, we're at the end of the game cycle. Why am I going to come out now? It's basically the same thing as Swanny, right? Yeah. Why come out now when I can wait till Black Ops 3? So I think all European players should really be scratched off. I don't think that's players they're going to be looking at. I think Parasite, yeah, he's kind of like an obvious go-to.
Maybe General?
Maybe. I mean, Facento, that could potentially work. Those kind of players have always said, hey, I would love to team again one day.
Now, Facento and TCM, I kind of strike those off right away. It's like, why would you go from a higher-seeded team currently in the Pro League on Orbit to join the very bottom team on Epsilon NA? So, like, those two are just like, no, that doesn't make any sense to me. Even though you saw a lot of talk on Twitter, a lot of interest from people around those players, I think you got to go for someone who is not on a Pro League roster right now. And honestly, you said EU players. Watson was asking me on Sunday night, you think I'm good enough for North America yet? I said,
what did you say?
If you keep playing this way, definitely, but you got to have the mindset that any team is going to want to invest in.
That's a valid point. I don't think we'll see European players back over for Season 3. I think the European players that are out here right now, I think they're the ones that should stay. Honestly, with that being said, with Swanny making this decision, I think that could open the eyes to maybe like Moose and Judd. They could be sat there going, all right, well, we're in North America now. What happens when Black Ops 3 comes out? What happens if we want to try and play there? So maybe some roster change with TCM after a pretty poor Gfinity as well. That wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world to me.
It's so tough if you don't have an official player visa.
It's almost impossible.
You're playing with real restrictions here. So these guys are going to have to get that all sorted out because, Black Ops 3, a lot of hype around it. Everyone remembers how near flawless and perfect Black Ops 2 was.
Glory days.
Bring it back. Yvonne, we trust.
We should also talk a little bit about Epsilon's next matchups because a lot of people look at the Pro League, their record, and they think, they're stoned at bottom. It's not going well. Then you look at the teams they have to play.
Oh!
Elevate. Very in form. OG. Envious. Denial. And Team Orbit. I look at that and I think that's 4 losses on the trot.
I just want to hug everyone on Epsilon and tell them it's going to be okay. But it's not.
Don't worry.
It's not. This is going to hurt. This week is just brutal. Today, tomorrow. Elevate, Optic Gaming, Envy, and then you get Denial. Just when you think you're out of the woods, you have to take on Replays, Slasher, and this Denial squad that has been tearing up the Pro League.
It's not pretty. I think that's 4 losses, especially when you consider away, away, away. The first 3 games against Elevate, OG, and Envy are all away. They finally get a home game where they can pick host against Denial. And then Orbit is the realistic game you look at and you think, okay, potentially you can pick that up. But again, you're playing these games without that solid 4th. You don't even have Swanny now. So you're looking for a new 4th. It very much kind of the situation ISO was in when they were playing tough games without that full team.
Right.
Realistically, you can't look at that and think you're going to pick those wins up. So I think we may actually see a record at the end of the season as the worst performance from a team ever in MLG Pro.
Hey, at least you're setting records, man.
That's true.
Your name is going in a record book.
That's definitely one way of looking at it, I guess. But the talking point really of Swanny in North America, I think we'll see him here again. Not in Advanced Warfare, but definitely in Black Ops 3.
I want to bring him over to just analyze on a daily basis.
The guys. So
Swanny, analyze my life. Just talk to me.
Anyway. Does he potentially join a European team? Maybe Epsilon EU?
I think he's got the competitive drive to keep playing, but really I think what he was inspired by working and living in the Optic House for a little bit was just the grind, the streaming grind, and being able to produce YouTube content. I think he sees how Optic Gaming was able to grow that brand and become so successful. He's going to start taking notes from that, and I think hopefully applying it to his downtime back home.
That's good. That's what you want to see.
If you're Swanny, though, do you try and hop on an EU team? Because there's so many squads that would just be like, yes, come on.
Yeah, Swanny is kind of like, you don't say no to Swanny. Swanny comes knocking on the door and says, hey, I want to team with you guys. Someone's getting dropped, very quickly. I think if I'm Swanny, I look at the likes of Mad Cat. Those 2 X Games, for example, when Mad Cat kind of crashed out, guess who he was talking to? He was talking to Swanny. He was like, hey, I feel like my teammates can't shoot straight. He was very, very upset with the teammates' performances. So maybe we see something there. Would kind of make sense. Epsilon branded, why not
Makes
at that
sense.
point?
Epsilon NA to Epsilon EU. Pretty easy move right
it would
there.
be an easy switch. But then I think if I'm Swanny, you've got MLG Worlds, which is going to be the one event if he wants to play. That's where he's going to set his goals. And if he's going to play that event, he isn't going to want to come over here with a, like, 50% talented team or like a team which isn't well-rounded and well-practiced. He's going to want to come over here to try and win.
So he needs to go to Vitality.
I look at Madcat immediately.
Yeah.
Every single time you see Madcat play against the top teams, he's never played badly. I don't want to point fingers at teammates, but it has, for the most part, been teammates not playing well.
Yeah.
And I think if he surrounds himself with players of equal ability who are as consistent, and that's the key, because Swanny, being over in North America, has learned consistency. So that duo right there would make perfect sense, and that would be a godlike duo as well. If you talk about holding down a map with a BAL, there's not that many teams with that much AR presence that could compete. I mean, you look at FaZe, for example, Enable's BAL has definitely got a lot better, but Madcat and Swanny shooting at Clay and Enable in a BAL fight, that's something which gets me very excited to think about.
I love the fact that we can do chat polls, and while we keep talking about everything else, if we can get production to throw up a chat poll, who would you want to see Swanny play with? Would you like to see him go play alongside Madcat with Epsilon EU? Would you like to see what he could do to a young Infused team? And
that could work.
And maybe help bring up the most successful squad we saw at Gfinity? Or would you like to see him go back to hanging out with Tommy, possibly Josh still on the roster, and maybe Watson over on Vitality? Because, PD had some up and down games, but I feel like Swanny brings you some consistency throughout a tournament.
Right. I think it's so tough. It really is, because you kind of want to see Swanny go back Tommy maybe. But again, I think that one tournament they're going to look at is going to be Worlds.
Yeah.
And I would personally rather see one very, very talented European team who's well practiced between now and Worlds come over to North America, as opposed to 3 or 4, which you kind of look at and you're like, how are they going to do? Probably not that well. I would rather just see that one stacked team just come over and really put up a big fight.
Over on the Epsilon side, Epsilon NA that is, I saw tweets going back and forth between Aqua and Remy and Facento and Remy. Remy kind of shot down the idea of a TR return pretty quickly.
That's surprising, because that was something they talked about when they were still TR. When they were trying to get in the Pro League, they said, hey, maybe somewhat down the line we can make it happen.
All right, guys, that poll earlier, where do you want to see Swanny land? Is it Epsilon? Do you want to see him playing with Infused? Or do you want to see him maybe go back to Vitality if he does, in fact, play for the EU? Let us know. We'll announce that result in a little bit, but let's keep going here, Ben. Pro League kicks off again tonight. We had a nice little break for Gfinity, the players traveling. Everyone's back home, and it's time to get back to the games. But where do we stand right now?
Right now, I mean, we'll take a look at the standings for you. The top side really shouldn't be very surprising. It's kind of as it was pre-Gfinity. I think a lot of people kind of look at those games and like, oh, what's going on? FaZe sitting first place, 9-2. Second place, Denial, 7-1. And I think this is something which we really need to point out. When that team was formed, a lot of people didn't have faith in them, and they have come out all guns blazing. This is a very talented squad. Third place, Optic Gaming, 6-1. They've started to kind of fall down the rankings, but it's not due to losing games. They have a couple of games rescheduled, which they're trying to catch up on.
Yep.
So you could potentially see them rise up very quickly.
You'll see those, yeah.
Yeah, I think you see them twice this evening. Team Elevate, fourth place, 7-3. They're on a massive, massive hot streak right now. I mean, they were in the bottom 4 at one point in the Pro League. They've really turned things around. TK in 5th. Optic Nation still on the first page as well. They're in 6th place, 4-4.
TK lost to Infused twice this past weekend. Not super impressed by that squad. Optic Nation, though, showing some strength on land. Really impressive play out of Moch there. The big thing to note here, though, is the game percentage. And it's a little bit surprising for me to see Denial with the best in the game right now. 74.2 of all games that they've played, they've won. That's ahead of FaZe at 73% and 69% of Optic Gaming.
Honestly, they've been playing very well, though. Like, you look at some of the performances that they put up, and they really do look like one of the strongest, if not the strongest team in the Pro League right now. Because let's not forget, you didn't see that team at Gfinity. So a lot of people kind of looked at Gfinity and was like, oh yeah, when it comes to Pro League, FaZe OG is still the top 2. But well, hold on a minute. Denial, they're still a factor in the Pro League here.
And then another factor here is TK and Optic Nation can't even win half their games. Something else to keep an eye on. I mean, right now they're on the front card, but they're 1 or 2 losses away from dropping down to our 7 to 12th place. And here you can see where the teams are sorted out currently. Team Orbit has an interesting logo. Apologies for that. But Envious, 4-6, was the 3rd best team at Gfinity, in my opinion. They took Optic Gaming in group play to Game 5. If they win that Search and Destroy, you know, they have potential of taking the #1 spot in that group. Orbit 4 and 6, I think they're one of the weaker squads kind of in the top 8 here. I wouldn't be surprised if they fall down to 10th. And then if we see a little shakeup with Isolation eSports making its rise. Rise Nation wasn't sold on them this week, and I'm not going to lie. You had some good games out of Apathy. You had some crap games out of Apathy, and Wheats was just kind of non-existent. The other casters called him out. Normally, I don't like to point any fingers specifically on this Rise squad as they're still figuring things out, but they just did not get it done on land. Same can be said about TCM, losing to Vitality in the rematch.
Huge surprise to me. I thought TCM going in were going to be great. You know, 5th place at UMG. You got Jordan Moose on home soil, going to be feeling good. But they just didn't turn up at all. And 11th in the Pro League at 2 and 7. I mean, it could be worse. I guess you could be Epsilon 1 and 8. And we kind of looked at Epsilon's next 4 games. That's going to probably change to 1 and 12 very, very quickly. So the bottom side, I think you can kind of ride out Epsilon from being at finals. I don't think it's too late for the likes of ISO, Rise, maybe TCM to turn things around. But they need to go on win streaks now. There's no longer the ability to say, oh, you know, we kind of won 1 today and then we lost 1 the next day. You can't go even in a week. You need to just plow through and rack up a lot of wins. That's exactly how Elevate got out the bottom 4.
We asked you earlier, where do you want to see Swanny go? Most people said Epsilon EU. They'd like to see the Swanny Mad Cat duo once again. I would not be upset with that. Talking about, though, tonight's matches, we're going to see the Gfinity rematch. Optic Nation going up against TCM. This is a pretty exciting battle. We saw it on the main stage going toe-to-toe. I thought TCM was going to win this matchup the first time through, but instead it's Nation taking out that Game 5.
Yeah, Nation, we're clutching up, and you have to look at Mochillo, big part of that. We've kind of been preaching about him on the eSports report for a while. He was originally added for Respawn, but his S&D has done absolute wonders, always dropping double digits. And then when it got to LAN, you actually saw how dominant Mochillo could be with the AR.
I think TCM's big issue is Aches and TP with one mindset, Moose and Jerd with another.
100% agree.
And we need to see everyone on the same page tonight to take out our 3rd place squad from Gfinity. Otherwise, TCM will continue to fall in the leaderboard. There's not much farther that they can go. Bottom 2 is pretty bad right now, but
it's true.
But I'm excited to see Elevate with their full lineup tonight. Their matchup is against Epsilon, who I think we know who their 4th is going to be. Saw some emails going around a little bit earlier. Optic Nation versus Denial, though. That 7-10 is the one I asked to get eyes on. I think that's going to be a huge matchup. Nation gets a warm-up against TCM. Now going up against Denial, who has the most wins out of all the games, percentage-wise. I think that's going to be a great battle.
I really think that's where Optic Nation can prove themselves, because they obviously placed 3rd at Gfinity. Whether you want to say it was a little bit of a blessed bracket run that they had, you can kind of make your own decision upon that. But if they can beat Denial, they can really solidify and say, hey, look, we really are a top team in the game. You can't take that away from us. Of course, Optic Gaming will be going up against ISO at 820. I think that one should be relatively easy for OG. Denial TK. Again, Denial already going to be warm after that game against Optic Nation. I don't think TK really stand much of a chance in that one. And then OG versus Epsilon. I feel so bad for Epsilon tonight because they play Elevate, they play OG. It's not going to be a good night for them.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. And Optic Gaming, Isolation. I'm looking forward to that match. Originally, I thought, oh, ISO could take this, but watching Optic, their only weakness was in uplink, really. They dominated the hard points against FaZe. Their weakness was in uplink and search. They were on and off. So ISO has to win both searches.
Yep.
And then they have to pray to win an uplink, which I think is their worst game type statistically.
I mean, last time they played, ISO actually managed to steal a hard point against OG. It was a drift hard point, but at the time, obviously drift kind of meh. Wait, was it drift hard point?
Yeah, it was a hard point.
What hard point was it? I think it was. Yeah, I don't know. But either way,
you're not getting that same Optic Gaming though, that you saw.
That's definitely the big thing to really talk about is this OG team is definitely fired up, and I think they're going to be more inspired than previously because they've lost 2 finals on a row now. So it's going to be like, hey, let's get back, let's grind. We're not losing again.
And I did talk to a lot of players. You know, a lot of people suffering some connection issues in previous weeks. They said this downtime with Gfinity has allowed them to secure their network. So hopefully everyone is able to stay online. If you're getting hit at this point, it's your fault for a lot of the people.
Essentially, yeah.
Opinions.
Essentially, I do agree. For now, though, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we return, we're going to talk about all of tonight's games in further depth and as well give you all of the casters' predictions. Be right back.